Oh, got it. All righty. Can they hear me? Does this work?
I don't know.
It doesn't work? It don't work. They can't hear me. Oh, they can hear me. Oh, it's for the Zoom people. I thought it was for everybody. Yeah, like that. You like how I fucked that in? All right, so I don't have my stool. So this will be a sermon of me standing up. Wow, it's been a long time. All right, good morning, church.
Morning.
How's everyone feeling?
All right.
It's so good to see so many people in person. Isn't that good to see people? You know, it's good to see everyone. Yes, it's encouraging. God is clearly moving and doing some great things here with us, and it's a beautiful day to be out.
They asked the question, no stool?
Yeah, I know, the stool is missing. I see it even on Zoom now. This is a different form of preaching. I know it's a new thing that they're doing now. All the young preachers are doing this, so we're standing up. But it's so good to see everyone, and I want to, we're jumping in our series called What is Faith? And we're exploring faith. We're going back to the basics of what we believe and why we believe it. And right now we're really honing on this component on what is faith. And I want to ask this question. What would life look like if believing in stuff was all you needed to make a difference in your life? Like, if you just believed that dieting was good, you didn't have to diet. But if you just believe that dieting is essential and important, and then all of a sudden you're losing weight and you got the body of your dreams, right? Like, and that's all you have to do is believe. You didn't have to eat any different. You could still eat whatever. You could go to Chick-fil-A, Burger King, like all that. Whatever you wanted to put in you it didn't matter, because your belief is what made the difference. Imagine what life would be like if all you had to do was believe that you were rich and you checked your bank account and there were some millies behind. Actually, I think some people, I know Chooks is probably saying some billies, right? I know Chooks. There's some millions right behind that, that bank account. Like, if all you needed was belief, right? And that made how would our lives be? Would there be any depression?
Yes.
She's like, yes. What would cause the depression? What would cause it?
Well, because you believe you're not good enough.
Ooh. And now look at that. And that is another side of it, right? What if belief changed all that? Isn't dual work in play? I could believe all I want about losing weight. I could believe all I want about my finances being a certain way, right? I could believe all I want that I could dunk.
Yeah, right?
I could believe that I'm LeBron James as much as I want to. We share the same birthday. Really the same time, 3 a.m. We were both born. It was exactly, but I can't do what that man could do.
Same year?
Same year.
Oh.
Yeah, Zach, me and LeBron, two completely different people if you see us. But if I believe it would make all the difference, but it doesn't. But, like Andrea shared, there's certain components of belief that actually plays a big role in our life, right? Sometimes what we believe about ourselves, right? It translates into what? Negative, but how we treat and how we act. Is this too loud? Am I too loud? I'm sure I'm too.
We got it.
Okay. I pray for the other congregation. I hope they're like, here he goes again. Look who's back. Standing up. So, lost my point. There we go. Yeah, belief, right? So we all kind of hone in on this concept of belief, and there's a lot there with belief. But my thing that I want us to really kind of dig into is this. Even outside of the negative component that we could all go to at times about ourselves and about people around us, most of us believe the right stuff about our lives, right? Like, most of us believe you shouldn't hurt people. Most of us believe you should save money and deal with your finances a certain way. We believe these things. Most of us believe that you should eat a certain way and we should take care of ourselves. Like, there's a lot of good things we believe, right? A lot of great things that we believe. We believe the right stuff. We know what we need to do, for the most part, to live a pretty decent life, right? For the most part. So what's the problem? We believe the right stuff. We know a lot of great things. What's the problem, though? I'm asking, like, for real. You don't actually do it. The execution, selfishness, right? You know, the problem's never a lack of information. We all know what we need to know. And we all know things like we need to forgive people. We know it's good. We know that, right? Like, in our heart of hearts, we know forgiveness is important. That's a good thing. We should do that. We all know that we need to love, right? Yes, you got to love people. We all know that we should really, even as Christians, we should love people who don't love us, right? We know that. But there's no but, right? It's we know that, period, right? Like, that's what it is. We would love it to be that, but we know it's not. We know that we don't do what we know. Right? We all know this. There's a lot of no's in this message. Just giving you a heads up. You know, and most of us, we all really struggle with this. And I think it's unique when we talk about this concept of faith, because I think Jesus addresses this a lot in his ministry. You know, the sad truth is this: knowing and believing itself doesn't change anything. If it did, that would be great. That would be awesome. As we all just described, that would be a beautiful life. You know, I believe that studying is good, and I believe this information is right, and I passed that test. You know, Toby wouldn't be so tired if that was the case. You know what I mean? Like, if belief was enough, we'd have a lot more energy from Toby. You know, Jesus knew these things, and he challenged us because he knows what's going to change us. The way he challenged us, he didn't call us to believe in him. He didn't call us to just believe in him. Jesus didn't spend a lot of time trying to get people to believe in him. Instead, he invited them to do something. He invited them to do something. He didn't say, just believe in me. And I'm sure there's a bunch of scriptures that come to your mind. If you've been reading through the Bible, you know where this goes. But this isn't what he called us to. He said, come and follow me. Come and see. Let me show you something. Because the fact is this: doing makes all the difference, right? That makes all the difference. There's a bee. Okay. I hate bees. So, you know, doing makes all the difference. And we know this. We know doing makes all the difference. And I know it could be like, okay, Paris, yeah, you're building a pretty simple house here. Like, we totally understand this. But do we? Really? Because our lives would be drastically different, right? And I think we need to start having some time to talk about that wall that stops us from going beyond knowledge and belief to actually living it out. And what does that look like? The fact is this: when we believe but don't do, our dreams don't come true. That was a little preacher thing. I had to do it. I had to do that. You know, every preacher does it, okay? Don't shame me, all right? Let me live, okay? But this is a real thing. When we believe but don't do, our dreams don't come true. There are things that we dream about that we want to see. There's a way that we would love our lives to be and to be shaped. We all have great dreams. The problem is we don't do it. You know? We don't go there. And that is so hard. No one has failed for believing the right things. No one has failed for believing the right things. That's a pretty bold statement. I had to go through my Rolodex. You can fact check me on that later. But if we believe, if we believe all the right things and don't do anything, our faith becomes weak and fragile. And this is what I want to hone in on today. Weak and fragile faith. Weak and fragile faith. In this series, we started off last week. We talked about the two things that amazed Jesus. Quiz. What are those two things that amazed Jesus?
Lack of faith.
Yeah, lack of faith and great faith, right? Great faith and lack of faith. Two things. Good job. Look at you. Give yourselves a round of applause. And I'm sure in the Zoom, y'all put it in the chat. But Koya left, so he didn't set it up so I could see that. So I just want to put that out there for the whole Zoom service. Koya should have fixed that. You can shame Koya, text him. I'll send you his phone number if you need that later on. But yeah, that was huge. And then we talked about the importance of an object of faith, right? That faith has an object. And as Christians, what should our object of faith be? Has to be centered on Christ. When you have Jesus as your object of faith, you have an unshakable faith. The problem is we have circumstances and situations that tend to be our object of faith. And those things are very unpredictable, right? Not steadfast and definitely will shake. We tend to think that Jesus is calling us to believe in him for the most part, but actually his invitation to the first century disciples was to follow me. It was to follow me. And so, what are some of the differences? I want to ask. What are some of the differences between asking someone to believe in me versus follow me? Go ahead, Jamie. Great point. Great point. You gonna say something, Simone? Simone's in the house. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like, there's got to be something to prompt you, right? So, yeah. Okay. I can see that. Anyone else? Go ahead. Yeah, yeah, and I think you're in my notes. Again, I see how people will be in my notes. Now I'm gonna have to scratch all of that Nicodemus stuff out of my sermon. But no, I mean that's very true. Right? Like you see that clearly, and the thing is, there's an obstacle. There's a cost to following. Is there a cost to believe? We gotta see. I don't know. We'll dig more into this one, right? We're going to dig into this, But we do know there's a cost to following, but the cost to belief, Anyone else? Like, what's the difference between following and believing? Like that invitation, like does that make any commitment? Yeah, that's a good one.
I was just going to say, like, belief doesn't really require a whole lot of physical.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are willing to follow, then your belief needs to be there.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I'm loving how engaged you guys are all this Sunday. I'm loving this. You know I eat this stuff up. Church is a communal thing. Mmm. Yeah. Mmm. Mmm. Ooh. Oh, this is interesting. Go ahead, Stella. Mmm. Mmm. No, I think that's a big one. I guess that surrendering of will versus with following versus belief that might not have that same. We got a lot of parents that are in that zone right now, having a baby. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it's a doing. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea. And then Kevin.
Belief doesn't have to be reality.
Mmm.
Like they believe the world was flat, but until you go out and actually look and see, you don't know.
Mmm.
Have beliefs in things that are incorrect.
Wow. There you go, Andrea. In my notes, you did this last time you was here. You went on vacation and came back in my notes. But you're right. That's a great point. Go ahead, Kev. Yeah, you can follow blindly. Yeah. Mmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Isn't the number of that verse just crazy in it itself? John 6:66, and it says that, and they all deserted him. It's very unique. Anyone into numerology stuff, but yeah, it's interesting to all these points that we're saying when we see what is the difference between belief and actually following God. Because I would add a third category to what you shared, Kevin. I think you're right. It's definitely the component of, not believing and following, and then there's a component of believing and following, but there's also the believing and not following, right? Like that is a big, and I think if we're to lump most people, especially in the church, into one of these categories, I think many people might fall in the third, right? And I'm not shooting no shots. I'm just saying I peep game for a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like peep game. I should give a definition there. I've watched, how things move in the churches for a while, and it makes a difference. Like that category is a big one. Jamie, I'm gonna let you jump in before I move forward. I see Jamie was like, "No, you're not gonna go past me on this one. I got something to say." Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is the beauty of what I love to call the process. It's the process. You can't shortcut the process, right? 76ers fans know that very well. Right? You can't shortcut the process, and now they're having some problems in the process, but trust it, Ben might stay. And so the way things the way things move, that process teaches us a lot. Like the brother was sharing, when I was young, I believed this. And then what happened? He experienced life. He grew. You go through it, and it's like experience doesn't match my belief. So now I got to make a decision. We all have to make a decision in this space. I know people are like, Parrish, you're spending a lot of time talking. Where's the Bible at? Okay, we're going to get into some Bible. All right? We're going to get into some Bible here. But this is seen throughout Jesus' life. And here's the thing about the follow me component. Following me is very interactive, right? It's engaging. It's relational. This is what's so powerful. Jesus was like, look, it wasn't just like, let me be a teacher from a distance and I'll give you information and you believe that. It was like, come with me. Follow me. I'll show you something. This is powerful. And this is seen throughout the life of Jesus, all the way to him going into Jerusalem. And past that, we see it with the disciples in the book of Acts. Right? You see the disciples saying the same sentiment to people. Come follow us. Come and see. Saying the same thing. So what happened from the invitation that Jesus gave to come follow, from the first century utilizing a similar example to come follow, to the current church today, and our infatuation with not saying come follow, but saying believe. Just believe. Believe what I'm telling you. Little magic fingers. You know what I mean? Like, believe me. And I'll say this, and I'm not trying to, to attack belief too much here, but I am. Okay? So believe in me is easy. It's hard, yes. I mean, there's obstacles in really coming to understand God, but there's a lot of things we believe in. Some of us believed in the tooth fairy. Some of us believed in I got a lot of trouble back in the days for preaching about Santa Claus. But TJ remembers them in the staff meetings. A lot of us grew up believing some stuff. I don't know what you're teaching your chitlins, but you know what I mean? Like, we believe some stuff. And then we grew up. Believing is easy. It is. We believe all types of things. It's easy, it's safe, it's less demanding. But the invitation to simply believe in me will ultimately leave you exactly where you are. Not changed. No different. Jesus didn't call people to believe in what I can do so that you could go to heaven. He called us to live a faith-filled life. He's like, I need you to live this out. I need you to go and live this out. A life that reflects a trust and a confidence in God. That is powerful. The invitation was for people to live their lives in such a way that reflects a trust and confidence in who Jesus is and what Jesus is calling us to. Charles Stanley makes this quote that I really like. He says, Jesus is most honored by our living, active, death-defying, in spite of faith. And I love this. Jesus is most honored by our living, active, death-defying, in spite of faith. And that is a faith that I think we need, especially now. Especially now in the church. You know, that's the same thing God is calling us to. You know, you think about things, for example, you have an appointment and you're supposed to be somewhere at 7:30, and you know that's kingdom time. Everything's at 7:30, which I think is evolving now. Right now we're doing more 7 o'clock. I don't know what happened, but you know things are changing. COVID. You know, you're supposed to be at a place right at 7 o'clock, and you're running late. You're running late, and there's a group of people waiting for you, and someone tells that group, "Don't worry, they're gonna be here." If they're not here, something must have happened, because this isn't like them. And then you finally get there and you hear that. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel good. Why? There is a trust, right? Because it speaks to, I know you. I know this person's not like this. I know this person will come through. And if they didn't come through, it's because something's up. Because this is not in their character. Right? It's a trusting in who they know you to be through that experience with you. Through that life. We are honored when there's a gap between what people expect of you and what they experience from you, and they fill that gap with believing the best about you. They fill that gap with trusting in you and your character. They're not, you know, this isn't normal for them. So something must be up. We're honored when that happens to us. How much more does God feel? Right? When we give that same type of honor and respect and trust to him. You know, I shared, some of y'all know when I first moved here, my phone got robbed, you know, by these hoodlums out here in Princeton, you know. So, you know, I went to go take out the trash, dropped my cell phone. I thought someone was going to come who walked past and was going to give it back to me. He picked it up, looked at the phone, looked at me, and ran. You know, and I was in, you know, my house shoes, you know what I mean? Because I had to take the trash to this place which is far away. And I sent a letter to the complex saying they need to make more trashes closer to your buildings because it's not safe that anyone should have to walk so far to take out their trash. But, you know, I'm like, I'm chasing this dude and he was gone. All of a sudden that same day he goes on, because my phone was open, he goes on my Facebook. He posts like some crazy message on Facebook. And like it was insane. Like it was some like I actually tried to go back to find it and I deleted the message. But he posted this insane message on my Facebook. All of a sudden, and I'm like horrified, like, oh, this guy has my accounts. He done blocked me out my Netflix. Like it was crazy. You know what I mean? Like he went to work. He knew what he was doing because he was like within 30 minutes, he'd already like started doing all these different things. I end up going, I think on my wife's phone, on my sister-in-law's phone to my Facebook account. And I see he made this insane message using foul language, but I see like 300 plus comments saying this is not Paris. His phone, his thing must have been hacked. This isn't him. This is not how he. And I'm just watching all these people respond and like telling this person like we're gonna report you, like, you know, and going after him. And that made me feel like, wow. I need to find this guy and finish him off. No, I'm just like, I'm playing. There was some rage. I ain't gonna lie. You know what I mean? Like what he posted was crazy. You know, and so I'm struggling, but I was so encouraged to see how people responded to that message. To like over 300 comments of different people saying this is not Paris. This is not how we communicate. Something's wrong. I'm calling his wife. You know, something's up. You know, like it was so much concern. And they knew me because of that relationship. This is not in his character. There was a trust. To the point that person, I think did he text you? He texted my wife saying, I'm so sorry. Your husband seems like a really good guy. I'm going to leave his phone at the office. You could come pick it up. In the bushes behind the office. You know what I mean? And you could pick it up. And I ended up getting my phone back. And then I took it to Verizon and switched it out because I didn't know what he put on that thing. So I was like, oh, but that was super, again, like that speaks volumes. Man, when we do that with God, that speaks volumes. So I'm going to tie this in a little bit. You know, what does this got to do with Jesus? A big question I think we should all ask ourselves is this. What fuels or facilitates the development of enduring faith? What fuels or facilitates the development of enduring faith? What are those ingredients? How do we do this? How do we create that? Yeah. I mean, I hate to sound so simple, but that is it. You have to use it. And what does it look like to follow Jesus in these times? What obstacles are in front of you that make it difficult to follow him? I believe just obeying the practical teachings makes such a big difference. It makes such a big difference. When you need to forgive and you do it, and you see how God blesses it, it makes a difference. But when you need to forgive and you don't, what happens? Does your faith grow? Is it because of God? When you need to do the things that God has called you to do and you don't do it, does your faith grow? It only grows when you do what God has called you to do. You know, I make fun of Chooks a lot. You know, we talk about like hanging out. He's like, I'll bring it. We talk about hanging out with people. And I'm like, Chooks, we need to hang out more. And he's like, yeah. And then he finally comes and hangs out, right? And he's like, man, I needed this. I should hang out with people more often. This is so good. And I'm like, yeah, you know, the Bible talks about that. You know, it's good when you fellowship. It helps you to grow. It's important. You know, I spent a lot of time. We went through the Sermon on the Mount a lot, right? You know, the morning devotionals. We spent some time in the Sermon on the Mount. So I'm not going to go too heavy in the Sermon on the Mount, but I do want to give a quick recap. Jesus said some intense, simple things, right? In the Sermon on the Mount. Laid it out of what it means to be a part of his kingdom. Beautiful things that we would all love to see. If the world lived like this and the world looked like this, would be a great world. If I could do some of these things, it would be awesome. And then he ends the Sermon on the Mount with all this practical teaching, and he ends it with a parable. This parable is a really powerful parable. I preached a little bit about it a few weeks ago, but it says a lot. You know, one of the things that I just want to kind of bring out is that, you know, our faith is like a muscle. And if you don't exercise it and you don't work it out, it will not grow. It will not grow. You know, and God says, it's pretty much saying yes to God regardless of your situations and circumstances. Yes, even though everyone else is saying, no, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to do this. Even though the situation looks like this is dangerous. My health, my life, my situation, my circumstances are going to be at risk if I go and I do, but I trust you. It makes a difference. In this parable, he shares something that I think is super big. And I got to bring this up because I want to make sure this is on your mind before we go into the parable. One of my major points from last week, I shared this, that trust is the currency of relationships. Remember that? Trust is the currency of relationships. That is so important. If you want to have a healthy relationship, you have to have trust. That's essential. It is the currency of relationships. You know, and we have to have trust in our invisible God that we don't see. We have to trust that he is going to be faithful to do what he said he's going to do. And that trust motivates us to do our part. You know, There's a difference between experiencing the miracles of God and experiencing God's faithfulness. And I think we lean on experiencing the miracles of God a lot. And the miracles of God is God getting me out of a mess I made. You know, you make a mess and then God cleans it up and gets it out. But you know what? There's only one way to experience his faithfulness. There's only one way. And it's through obedience. You cannot experience the faithfulness of God if you don't hold on to his teachings. If you don't follow his teachings. You know, faithfulness is me obeying God's will for my life and acting on it. And that gives God the opportunity to show up and show off and come through. That's it. Like if you don't obey, if you don't trust, if you don't hold on, you don't get to experience the faithfulness. Because it's only after the act of obedience when you can see, wow, God, what you said works. Your way is right. Man, it paid off. I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think I was going to be safe. I didn't think I was going to get through this. You know, if we never step out and obey God in real time, we deprive ourselves from the opportunity for God to show us his faithfulness. And so, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he says this parable. Verse 24 of Matthew 6, it says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and believes in them, agrees with them, remembers them, feels convicted by them, right? Feels convicted by these words of mine. Y'all are looking because it doesn't say that. That's so people are like, wait, Paris, what are you reading? Like, what translation? You know, it's funny because people love to feel convicted. Especially in our churches. We love that. We love that. Like, if you don't walk away from a sermon feeling like you've been beat up, like, it's like, I don't know if it was that good. No, you know what I mean? I didn't get beat up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not convicted. You know? And so, it's funny because when I'm convicted, I'm encountering God. That's kind of how we tend to walk away feeling that way. But, you know, that's not really how God works. He doesn't want to work from the space of shame and guilt. He wants to work from the place of trust and obedience. He wants you to see him through that. So when you hold on to this component of trusting God, and again, this parable is about building on the rock or building on sand. And he starts off with this challenge like, therefore, everyone who hears these words, all these practical teachings that I've shared in the Sermon on the Mount, everyone who hears these and builds on them, they're building on a rock. And as we all know, and we've highlighted this many times, building on the rock is hard. We all get that. We've beat that thing up multiple times. And it's expensive, it's costly, it's hard work, it's labor intensive. And Jesus is saying, in the long run, the person who not only listens, not only hears, not only gets convicted, but trusts and obeys, regardless of the challenges, regardless of feeling like an outcast, regardless of my fear or emotions, I'm going to do it your way, God. I'm going to do it the hard way. Regardless of how it costs, I'm going to do it. I'm going to build on the rock. And it's going to take time. And it's going to be difficult. And I might be alone. But I'm going to trust. And I'm going to build. It ends up being so much more rewarding. You know, the parable of building on the rock and building on sand is a parable not necessarily based on obedience. It's a parable that's all about trust. It's all about trust. Will you trust me? Because from the start, he's saying to build before you see me hold you down. Right? He's saying, I've spoken, now you build. And it's only after that, right? When the storm comes, when the waters rage, when the winds blow and beat against the house, then you see the faithfulness. But the irony is this, right? You don't get to see it before. Isn't that interesting? Like, you might get glimpses. You might see him do other stuff in other people's lives, and that inspires you to trust and, and believe. But in order for you to really see him show up in your life, you got to first what? You got to build. This is the crazy thing at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. After sharing all of that information that we spent multiple weeks dissecting piece by piece, after all of that, he's saying this. Now you got to trust. And you got to build on this rock. And it's only after that you're going to see my faithfulness. You have to act first. You have to build. You have to obey first, even before you know what the outcome is. He's saying, if you want to experience my faithfulness, you have to trust me. Verse 25, it says, the rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them in a notebook that they're not going to check again till next year, that does not put them in their thoughts and feels convicted but walks away and is trying to figure out what they're going to have for lunch, but puts them into practice and does not put them into practice, is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came, the streams rose, the wind blew, it beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. The implications for Christians is scary here. Because what this parable is ultimately saying is this: it's possible to hear, to be around, and to believe, and live a life that undermines your faith. It is very possible to hear, to be around Christian folk and people, to believe, yet you live a life that undermines your faith. You can live a life in such a way that undermines your own faith, and this sets you up for a faith crisis. And now I want to talk to the church, because I feel a lot of us are here in a lot of different ways. There's plenty of us going through transitions, different transitions. We talked about so many moving couples. We got so many different people on Zoom and different spaces. There's so much transition. And in transition, the dangerous thing is if you don't really have a strong foundation, oh my goodness, this could be a rocky spot for anyone. Regardless of your knowledge, you could be a genius and study out everything. You could know multiple languages, Hebrew, Greek, and all that. It don't matter. If your foundation is not set right, transition could ruin you. It could ruin you. We're all in a transition. People dealing with life stuff, life circumstances, COVID stuff, COVID protocols, all this stuff. We're all being affected. And the faith crisis is that believing can be deceiving. Believing can be deceiving. Most people who don't believe in God, a lot of times, they don't believe God. It has nothing to do with God. Most people that kind of have this standoffish, I'm not, following faith. Most of the time, it's them looking at us. It's them looking at Christians claiming to be building on the word of God, that we claim that we're building on the rock. Yet, everything that we're doing looks like we're building on sand. How we respond to trials and tribulations, it looks like we're building on sand. How we deal with trusting and loving people, it looks like we're building on sand. They actually look at how we actually live, how we treat others, how we deal with fear, how we deal with pain, and they don't believe that we believe what we say we believe. Because they're looking at you like, do you believe what you're talking about? Because You're running around just as stressed out as everybody else. You're running around just as fearful as everybody else. You're running around just as, you're even more, like there's so much things that we don't even walk in that confidence. And I get it. I'm not even trying to beat up anyone. I know that these times are hard. I understand that. And I love this parable because it doesn't exclude that. It says that the wind will blow, that the rain will come, that the streams will rise, which is saying problems are inevitable, but your foundation is selectable. You could choose to build on the rock. That is a choice. You have that. But man, the storm will expose if you're doing that. The storm will expose if you're doing that. And Jesus is not the object of our faith. And again, that's why I tell people all the time, like, the object of your faith can't be me. Because I'm weak and I struggle. The object has to be Jesus. But let's be honest. We are his lights here on earth. So yes, people are going to see us. And yes, it makes a difference how we respond and how we act. Our inability to take our belief and turn it into practical application has nothing to do with Jesus and his faithfulness. That's all on us. And these times have exposed it. Christians, and we've talked about this, how Christians are more committed to political parties than they are committed to Jesus. We've went in depth with this in 2020. And you see it. The trials and everything, it exposed it so clear. It exposed it. They're more committed to political parties instead of love and biblical teaching. Christians have been paralyzed by fear of COVID and have avoided applying biblical love and practical teachings and concern and engagement with other disciples. We've seen this. Even on Zoom, it's like people don't even show their faces. Like, it's like I'm not even trying to engage. Church now is like, give me. I don't give. I'm here to be entertained. I'm here to be given something. I'm not here to contribute. And I've watched it all year on the Zoom services and in other spaces. I'm like, we're not a community. This is like Netflix now. It's not family. This is dangerous. Christians are so, and not just the fear component, but there's Christians who are so arrogant in their view of the COVID situation that I'm not scared of nothing. And then we're judgmental of other people. We're judging others like, well, they're not, and they're clearly not, and they're clearly this, and the judgment, and the criticism, and the critical attitudes. Like, this is like, it is in the church. The amount of judgment that I've been seeing, the amount of distance where people aren't even engaging each other. Like, it's not good. The storms are exposing something. The winds are exposing something. And I think we all need to ask ourselves, what is it exposing in you? James, Jesus' brother, he said, do not merely listen to the word. And so what? Deceive yourselves. And this is why I said, man, believing could be deceiving. Believing could be deceiving. Some of us be believing, well, I believe in Jesus and I showed up for service. I logged on. But man, this is cool, but this is not all it means to be a Christian. This is not all it means to be a disciple. A faith that doesn't do any good isn't any good. A faith that doesn't do any good isn't any good. And then actually it's bad for you because it deceives yourself to think that you're stronger than you are. He says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is someone who looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at it immediately forgets what he looks like. believing perfectly and doing nothing. When it comes to our physical appearance, we're not just hearers, right? We're doers. When it comes to your physical appearance, if you got an important meeting, if you got something to do, if you got to go to work, you're not just saying, well, I know the right stuff, and that's all that matters. Right? I know, I got the information. That's all that matters. No, if you got a presentation or something, you're doing what? You checking to make sure you look good. Right? You'd rather show up late than to not show up looking the part. And we wouldn't do that. But the reality is we do that with church and we do that with God. James offers this promise at the end. And I want to conclude with this. This promise is pretty heavy. He says, but whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they believe. No, that's not it. They will be blessed in what they do. If you want to experience God and his faithfulness and his blessings, you have to do something, church. You got to do something. It ends with this in the parable. It says, you gotta, it talks about putting into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. And when the rain came down, the streams rose and the wind blew and beat against it. The house fell with a great crash. And do you know how people who listen and believe but don't do, how they respond to a great crash? There's two ways that they respond to a great crash. They either blame God or they conclude there is no God. And I've watched this happen a lot. On how I've witnessed Christians, people of faith, respond to great crashes. It's either this is God's fault and they blame God, and it's like, why God? Why did you do this? Why is this? Like, is that? Or it's this, well, there's clearly no God. For something like this to happen to me, for something like this to happen in my life, even though they believed, and I think it exposes a lot about the strength of our faith. Not this belief, what you believe, but your practice of faith. Your practice of faith matters. You have to prepare for the inevitable. One of the things with Mercer, we're a small church. God has been blessing it. It's a growing church. And there are things that we've intentionally kind of created because we don't want to create a church that's full of people who just believe. We want to create a church that creates opportunities for you to live out your faith. What does it look like to live out what you believe? And how do you transform individuals from the inside out? What does that look like? And so we talk about our salt and light ministries, right? Like the life group and the mission groups, and how important these are for our development. How the life groups are a time for us to get that help personally. And it's an opportunity not just for you to get help personally, but for you to help other people. Like, I feel like sometimes we're always looking like, what's this service providing for me? And that's not the way a Christian should ever look at something. It should be like, how can I give to this space? How can I serve the people in my life group? How can I help out and disciple and lift up? During the people in my life group are sharing this. This is church stuff I'm talking about here. But I want us to really understand the framework and how we're trying to live this out as a community. That we're not just believing these things, but we're walking it out in practical faith. And then we have our mission groups. And again, this isn't a group where it's like, how does this group serve me? It's like, how do we serve our communities? One thing I will boast about this with the Mercer Church until kingdom comes. The way that we serve our communities for a church of our size has been incredible. From block parties that we've thrown, from backpack drives and different things that we've given, the way that we have done things in our community, this is the type of church that we are. It's not just here. It's how can we serve? And so we're like, let's not just center around Trenton and try to serve there. How do we serve Princeton? How do we serve Hamilton? How do we serve Ewing? How do we serve Lawrenceville? How do we make an impact there? So we're going to get the disciples that live there to be able to say, what can we do to serve there? But a lot of times I'm hearing disciples like, what is this group doing for me? Why can't we do it like this? No, guys. We have a purpose. We have to live out our faith. We're not going to create a church where it's just set on tuning in, hearing a message, yeah, or nah. You know what I mean? Like, there's no thumbs up, thumbs down like Netflix on this bad boy. This is you live it out. And so we're going to be engaged in these things, and we're going to be talking a lot more about this. But, you know, we talked about salt and light, right? Salt was created, the Bible used it when Jesus talked about it in Sermon on the Mount, was to do two things. What were those two things? Preserve, right? Well, not add flavor. I kind of went at that one. Based on what Jesus taught in the verse, I mean, it does do that. But it's to promote the growth of good things and to prevent the growth of bad. That's what we're called to do. We are called to promote the growth of good within the lives of one another, life groups. I mean, and prevent the growth of bad within the lives of each other in our life groups. And in our mission groups, we're doing the same. How can we promote the growth of good things? How can we promote the growth of good things in our communities? How can we prevent the growth of bad things in our communities? So yes, you need to be involved and engaged in both of these things. It makes a difference. It's an opportunity for you to exercise your faith. We got to start exercising, church. And I ain't saying go to Lifetime Gym or Planet Fitness or whatever. I'm saying go forgive somebody. I'm saying go love someone. I'm saying go initiate something. That's what we need to do. Your faith will grow. And when the storm comes, when the winds blow, you'll be a beacon of light for many. Amen.